Apparently, I've lived anything but a normal life. That is according to my friends. My stories of dating, sex, and life in general tend to make them laugh, and for years, they've told me I needed to share them with the world. So I decided that in the middle of a pandemic, it was a great time to start a podcast about the things that, well, entertain me. So grab a cocktail with us and welcome to the hot mess that is my life as an almost 40-year-old single makeup artist living in a college town in Florida. This is Kara's Lipstick Diary. You guys, we are back with another fabulous guest on our episode, and I am so excited. So this guest I met several years ago because I was doing her makeup for her headshot that was going to appear on the back of her books. I really didn't know what that meant or like what she was doing. I was just like, okay, cool, whatever. I'd known you from like events and other things. Well, it turns out she happens to be like a major romance novel author. Oh, you're major. Like you have 8 books out. That's major in my world.
Working on it.
So I am so excited to have Priscilla here to talk about the world of romance novels and all of that goes into that and all of it. So we start out, as you know, we have a cocktail. She has got her cocktail. It is a Tequila Mimosa. Okay, you guys?
I love it.
It is champagne, tequila, grapefruit juice, and something else, but I don't remember what it is. Don't worry, I'll put it in like the recipe in the like info section. But we, of course, also have our pink glitter in there as well.
It looks so pretty.
So have you tasted it? Is it edible? Like, I'm not poisoning you, am I?
Oh, no. It's got champagne. It's
exactly, right? That's what makes everything better.
I always have a bottle of bubbly in the fridge. Usually it's Scava. But, because you never know. There's always going to be something you can
always
celebrate, right?
a reason.
So have a bottle ready.
You've got to have a bottle of bubbly available at all times.
Yes.
Because it does make life just so much better. All right.
Nice.
I'm almost done with my cocktail.
And the glitter is a very nice Kara touch. I
you
love
know,
it.
it's got to have glitter. That's what makes everything in life better.
Yes.
So, first off, how did you end up becoming a romance novel author?
Well, I've always been, I guess not always, but I've always been a reader, right, first. And then I actually read my first romance novel. If you check out my website, you'll see this story there. But I was 15 years old, so sophomore in high school, living in the Keys, stuck in a hurricane shelter with my parents on base by day 2, like a typical teen. This is like pre-cell phone, whatever, like,
there was no other real entertainment.
Right? So by day 2, I was crawling the walls, annoying my parents and my dad. One of Papi's hurricane supplies was a bag full of Harlequin romances, Harlequin Presents. So Papi was like, just take one of my books, please, and read it. Basically, like, leave us alone.
Yeah.
So that was my entree into romance reading, like adult romance reading. And then flash forward a few years later in college, and by then I was military spouse, and we had a new baby. And like the military they gave us a surprise move. 2 weeks notice to move across the United States. We were students here at University of Florida. And so next thing I know, I'm in Sacramento, California, and I had to take a semester off of school. And so I did what a lot of people have done and said, you know what? I like reading books. I'm just going to write one. Like, how hard
No
can
problem.
it be,
This
right?
can't be that hard.
No problem. A little bit of a problem. It's a little bit harder than I thought. But that was one, like that semester, I typed because pre-computer.
Yeah.
My first romance novel. And that one was actually set in Key West, like the Keys to Love series. Bad for a whole bunch of reasons, right? Just like my next few books. But it was, I will say, for anybody out there who's been writing for a while, maybe getting rejections and that kind of thing, you just keep at it. It was 26 years later before I sold my first book and signed my first contract. And I'll be honest, I wasn't like putting out a book every year because I had 2 more kids and I got 3 degrees and, and moved around and changed my marital status and all of that kind of stuff.
And life gets in the way sometimes.
Yeah. But I did. I joined an organization, like a writing organization, and I wrote when I could, and I worked on my craft and all that kind of stuff. So if you're out there working and, plying your trade or whatever, I just say keep at it because it's never too late. Your time will come.
So I remember my grandmother was feisty. She, made it to 102. At 95, nice. She demonstrated what she did for her aerobics class, and it was pole dancing. She was the most epic person.
Apple, not
right?
far
I
from
know.
the tree.
I really
Yeah.
laughed because I'm like, Nana was before her time. She's also the one who marched me into Victoria's Secret at 13 and was like, this is where you buy your underwear. I love Literally, I have trouble buying underwear any place other than Victoria's Secret because Nana's on my shoulder.
Yeah.
But she had romance novels everywhere. Like,
nice.
I remember them sitting all over the house. But I remember also being told as a child, don't look at Nana's books. Don't pick those up. No, you are not supposed to be near those books. And I remember this like fascination with them, but this also like terror of like, what were these books with the men with the flowing locks? There was always a man with flowing locks on the cover.
Yes.
But I just remember this like stigma of like, why is Nana reading those? Like everyone in the family talked about it. What is it like? Because there's still a stigma with romance novels, even though it is the #1 selling genre of books out there.
Leads the mass market, right?
Yeah.
Leads sales in mass market media. I think, well, gosh, you hit on two things there. And one of them is like the evolution of the romance novel from the days that you're thinking of, right? With the clutch covers, and you still see some of those, but the work that's in between the pages has changed and evolved. And we can talk about that if you want. The stigma, I think a lot of it flat out will be a lot of us in Romancelandia, as we like to say, attribute that to the patriarchy. Yeah. And the people the decision makers that have predominantly sat on the other side of the table. Yep. The gatekeepers, and the idea that, it's a genre written predominantly by, not entirely, but predominantly by women. For a long time, the focus audience was women. My papi is in there, so there are men that read romances. But so when you have a genre that is mostly targeting the female population, and you have the gatekeepers that, maybe don't identify in the same ways with that, and there kind of starts to become the idea that, those women, head pat.
Exactly.
Thing,
yes.
Right? And so, I mean, for decades, there's been the call for more diversifying, for more on our side of the table as authors, but, also on the other side of the table, so diversifying, we want more women in powers of position, but we also want more women of color. Yes. And, and more people of color on the other side of the table making those decisions. It also then led to, there are smaller presses, up in New York, it used to be the Big Six. Yeah. Now it's the Big Five. There's, the rumblings, there's that it could become a Big Four, but, so you had the option of submit to New York to have your book published. And if they said no, that was it, right? And there's in more like in the last, 10 years with the advent of indie publishing and self-publishing and smaller presses. One of my books is published by Thule. It's a book in a continuity series. It's a smaller press. But that has allowed for more, more options for the author on our part. But there's still, I will say, within the world of publishing, those people that, maybe they want to cover the cover of the book that they're reading, you know, or, and also within academia, that kind of,
I remember being told, oh, well, it's not quality, and I'm like, but who cares? It's fun to read.
My question would be, who's to say what's quality, right? If I can identify with it, I read for escapism.
Right. So that's what most media is, whether you're watching TV, movies, reading, listening to podcasts. It's an escapism, and it's, what you find relevant. And I think the fact, I watched a documentary recently about the entire romance novel industry. That's kind of actually why I contacted you, because I watched the documentary and I was like, oh, hey, I know somebody who does this. But it discussed the fact that, one, the independent publishing has helped the industry so much, and two, that it is drastically a difference in how much romance novels sell compared to the next level up, which is thrillers. And yet an author of a thriller who, is considered, is on every news channel talking about their latest book, but you're not seeing that with the romance novels. And yet it's like 3 times as many being sold.
So you would think the powers that be, the ones that make the decision, would recognize who's the one making the money.
Who makes the money?
Right. Yeah.
The money is clearly in the romance novel industry. Obviously you grew up in a family that like respected it because it
Yeah.
was handed to you at a young age. So it makes sense why you were drawn
Yeah.
to writing that type. Did you get any pushback though from, you know, people that you were associated with in the fact that that was the genre you chose to write?
No, not really. Not. I don't know if that is a depiction of the people that I surround myself with.
Right.
Then, I mean, I have had those instances where, you know, when someone says, "Oh, what do you do?" and I, you know, and I say, you know, well, I'm a writing teacher, but I'm also a novelist, a romance novelist, and there are those people that kind of give you those, do you like doing your research, you know, or so do these do the stories, are they like about your life, and then you have those thoughts that you want to say. Do you ask Stephen King
The same
how
thing?
many people have you killed?
Right.
Or no.
Well, it's
right?
it's automatically
But-
built in almost slut shaming
Yes.
from
Yes.
just the genre that you write.
Right.
And you work in academia. Is there pushback in academia about what you write?
Not at the institution. Well, I work at two, and not at one that I'm not there as a writing instructor
Right.
or more like business writing, but the other one, I'm a adjunct faculty at Seton Hill University in their MFA, like their Master of Fine
Right.
Arts program, which is where I got my MFA. So
That's kind of fabulous.
Yeah, it's fun to go back. I love the campus. It's in Greensburg, Pennsylvania. So it's a low residency program. We go for a week at the start of each semester, and then the rest of the time you're at home working on it. And so it's like 45 minutes outside of Pittsburgh, beautiful little campus at the top of this hill. It's in wintertime when it's snowing, it reminds me of like Hogwarts. Yes. But so that's all genre fiction.
Right.
So no, but I will say, like in my undergrad,
Yeah.
which I took a writing workshop, and it was like over the weekend, you went to all these presentations, you picked 4 of the 6, and then you did their assignment.
Right.
And I submitted things that had either like a romantic element or something like that. And I learned really quickly over the weekend as we were going, and either when I was reading my work or asking a question, that if I wanted to get the grade that I wanted, which was an A, obviously,
Right.
I needed to write what they thought was going to be good writing, not necessarily what I wanted to.
Right.
So I did. I didn't take another writing class through them. So when I applied for Seton Hill, even though like I talked to the director on the phone and it sounded really welcoming for romance, I told myself, okay, go a semester. And if it's not, you do not have to pay master's, tuition, but to stay with a program that is not going to appreciate what you want to write.
What you want to write.
It could not have been like the complete opposite at Seton Hill. It was, it's welcoming. It's all genre fiction. So at any given time, you're talking with a horror writer, but you're talking about your characters, and I've had a horror writer that took a romance class because they just wanted to learn more about, a different genre. So obviously I stayed in the program. I graduated and I teach there, so I love it. But outside of those kinds of like genre, there are other MFA programs that I called when I was looking around. Yeah. The minute I said romance, they were like, you could like hear their bike backpedaling, right? And we don't really.
That's not our,
yeah. Mm-hmm. So to me, it was just that's not the program for me then.
Yeah. Well, it's so interesting because, like I say, I grew up being told like, no.
Wow.
And I grew up in a house that was very much filled with books. I was dyslexic, which I actually didn't learn to read till I was in 3rd grade. I was doing long division in kindergarten, but couldn't read.
Wow.
And I look back and I feel like if I had actually picked up Nana's books,
maybe
I would have really enjoyed it more because it was more me. But like I was discouraged from even looking at those books. Like we don't talk about the fact that Nana has those books. We don't discuss that. Those are hidden.
Did any of them watch soap operas?
No. So my family was very like not well. Okay, that's a slight lie. I did make my mother watch General Hospital with me in middle school, but she complained about that, even though she kind of did get into it. I made her watch that with me. Because all my friends watched General Hospital, and she was like, "You're not going to watch it without me."
Well, then, yeah.
But it was still. It was just not quite what we were looking for.
Oh,
so
wow.
yes.
See, and I grew up differently. Like my dad's from San Antonio. So my grandma would watch like Days of Our Lives, Another World. And so when we were visiting or if we were home, were home, right, you could watch it with her. And my abuela in Puerto Rico was always watching a telenovela. And those really dramatic,
Super dramatic.
Super drama. Yeah. So, I mean, with her, we remember my sister and I would joke, pre DVR, right? So at 7 o'clock, you were quiet. If you were in the living room, you were, and she wasn't going anywhere because at 7 o'clock, like Topacio or whatever, was coming on. Yeah.
You do not miss it either.
I think now, boy, how she would have loved DVR.
Because now you can watch it all, at your time when you want to.
You can pause it when your grandkid comes in. Yeah. Instead we were getting the which was like, be quiet kind of thing, So I think through that,
it all kind of makes sense for you. Like it's an automatic fit for you.
Yeah.
Well, and you also, you bring in, like, I don't speak Spanish. So I'm reading your book and I'm like, wait, there's Spanish. I was like, I don't know what this means, but I'll figure it out. And I love that you do, pay homage to your heritage and all of that in the books. Cause I never would have expected to pick up a romance novel and all of a sudden there's Spanish thrown in. I loved it. I thought it was absolutely engaged, even though I did have to look things up because thank God for Google. Cause I was like, I don't know what this means, y'all. I don't speak Spanish.
I try hard most of the time to, in context clues. So in one of my other books, the two sisters are fighting and the older one tells the younger one, cállate la boca, right? And I don't want the reader to either one, feel like they're left out. I want you to be in the story, feel like you're a part of them. So I don't want you to feel left out or, hop to Google. So I try the very next sentence, Lily tells her, I don't have to shut my mouth.
Yes.
Right? So most of the time, I always will say readers, if there's a time where you don't, let me know so I can see how,
I loved how it was integrated, how it seamlessly, yes, I did look up a couple things just because, I'm that type who's going to look up things when I don't understand. It was, I loved how you did that. And it was very, I have a lot of friends who switch from English to Spanish back and forth. Yeah. And it was this is very real. And I loved that about that. And again, she and I were just talking. In the Heights just came out in the movie, and in that it jumps back and forth between the English and the Spanish. And I don't feel at all lost when I'm watching that, even though I have no clue what they're saying half the time.
I noticed that sometimes they put the little subtitles, but not always. And I do wonder, wow, I'm really loving this. I hope whatever.
I've listened to it enough, and I sing along with it. I don't know what I'm singing. I hope it's appropriate. I don't know.
Oh, that's hysterical. Yeah. It's hard not to sing along with that. Right? I was doing a lot of mouthing last night at the movie theater. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I've literally watched it twice in 12 hours.
Well, I will say the same way that we've talked about the push for diversity and for more women on the other side of the table, the decision makers, there's also been a big push. Those romances that if you would have read them, your nanas, the romances I first read didn't have leads that were diverse.
No.
And so when I first started writing, I did the same thing. I tell my students, study the books that you like. Study even the books that don't do it for you so you can figure out why. Right? What's not making it resonate with you so that you don't do that. From that, right? Yeah. So you don't, but the books that so the early books, like that first Key West book, they were just like the books I was seeing, two Anglo characters, not, set in Key West, and it was not until late 90s that Kensington, who happens to be my publisher now for these books, had a line that was called Encanto. And that line, it was all Latinx characters. And interestingly enough, if you pictured the book like this, maybe this was English and it was the whole book, the first half of the book in English. And then you could flip it over and it was the book but in Spanish. And so I loved it because then I could practice, right? But that was reading those books. It was by people by Caridad Piñero and Laura Rios and Berta Platas and a slew of other ones. That was the first time, and it was 12 years, 15 years that I had been a romance reader.
Yeah.
Because this was maybe 1998, 99 time frame that it was the first time that I had seen people like me as the lead people. And it clicked something in my head, that, and the next book that I started writing, they were both like, it was set in Texas where Papi's from, and they were both Latinx. And I will say my earlier books, sure, the books before them, were wrong for all different kinds of things, right? I feel like I would like to think my craft was growing, but that first book that I wrote with 2 Latinx characters is the first book that finaled like in a national contest for unpublished authors. And
you found your voice.
Yes. I feel like I something inside me clicked that said, it's okay to write the stories that you really want to write about, instead of changing them, and I don't even know that I was really realizing it, but I was just writing what I was saying, right? Before. And now, and so when I go back to that moment of reading those books, it reminds me of why we keep pushing for more diversity, whether it's Latinx, whether it's Asian, LGBTQ+, just across the board, because it's important for our readers to see themselves. Like, this is the genre. Well, some of us like to say like the genre of hope. They are. The evolution of it is that in today's romance, the heroine has agency and she doesn't need to be saved.
She's not the damsel in distress.
Yes. Yeah. Right. Maybe she's doing the saving, or they're saving together. Yeah. Right. And they are, it's the celebration of healthy relationships.
Yeah.
Within the partners, but also those around them. And so why, to me, that's even more important of why we need to have diversity on the pages, so that anyone can see themselves in a book that is championing healthy relationships.
Yes. And I think that's amazing. Well, I think we're at a time in history where we're realizing that so many people have not had their voice, have not had their representation. We're recognizing that, passed on traumas don't need to continue the generational traumas. And I think we're seeing that in media, whether it's books, TV, things like that. You're seeing these healthier relationships being projected, and not, well, it happened to me, like, let's just keep this going. Right. And I love that you're saying all of that in regards to the books, making sure the different communities are seeing themselves, that the women aren't just damsels in distress, because a lot of us can't relate to that. Right.
But I think even, it's not that, like, I don't write books where these like kick ass.
Right.
Sorry,
we cuss on mine. Okay, I say fuck a lot.
I was like, wait a minute. I saw one and she did.
I wear a necklace that says unfuckwithable. Yeah. So we talk about.
So I don't write like about spies, and like, and see it, all of that.
But real.
Mine are more like familia dramas, people dealing with real stuff,
But that's what's relatable.
I hope so. I hope so. But even my heroines, like book 2 in my debut series, Rosa's, Her Perfect Affair. She's a librarian. She's the responsible sister. You want something done correctly, you go to Rosa, right? And so I feel like she's not one that you would think is like a kick-ass heroine, but yet when she needs to stand up and for herself and for what she thinks is the right decision for herself, she does. It surprises people. So I hope that, like within my heroines and in the heroines that I read, there's, they're not all the same, right? There are shades of, because
we're not all the same.
Because that's what the world is. Yeah. And in my books, like I don't always write just about all Latinx characters. Like there's the main familia is, but like in Island Affair, Sarah is, not
she's
Latinx,
not.
right? Yeah. And that's because that's the world around us, and that's what I want to write about, the world. Yes, people that look like me, but like my neighbors, like, like the real world.
I think that's absolutely fabulous, because I think we, for so long, it's just been forgotten about that there are people who are not just cookie cutters.
We're not all like,
so when you've been writing these, like, what have been some of the like struggles and things you have faced in getting your work out there into the public eye?
I will say, I think Kensington, like my publisher, has been really good, with me. I haven't had the problem of, where there's been any pushback about like, this is like too much, Latinx or whatever, and nothing like that. There's one time that my editor, with Their Perfect Melody, I got a track change that said, "Are you sure you want to use this word?" And that was like Lily is a victims advocate, Diego's Chicago PD. And I didn't realize I hadn't used it in other books. Like this just came out. Like when I'm writing, I'm trying to put myself in their head. So like right now I'm Lily and this is how Lily thinks and says. And so they use the word coño, right? Which to anybody like from the Caribbean, like in Puerto Rico, Cubans, Dominicanos, coño is like, damn.
Yeah.
And we use it like, like you walk in the door and I'm like, coño, nena, you're looking good.
Exactly.
Right? Or I stub my toe. Ay, coño, right? My editor did not know what it meant. And I had not done context clues enough. Right. So he Googled it. And it does not mean damn in like over in Spain.
Right.
It means something else. It means like pleasuring yourself.
That's a totally different meaning.
Which is totally not what I wanted to mean. And so when he said, "Are you sure you want to use this?" My first reaction was like, "Yes."
Yeah, why
right?
wouldn't I?
So I Googled it, and then I was like, "No."
No.
Right?
You're like, well, that totally changed the entire meaning of this scene.
Yeah. However, Diego would totally use it. So like I changed it for Lily, but when Diego said it, I made sure like the first time, like whatever happened, and he said, damn. And then right away, he's like, no, this was a double damn situation. So that hopefully people got that before they hit Google.
Well, because that's a very different meaning.
Yes, but that's the only time that they've questioned.
Yeah.
Like my first editor flat out said, that's your realm. We're going to leave it to you. They know, like my sister and my mom are my first beta readers. Mommy does it mostly like to check my Spanish. Do I have the accents right? And things like that.
Yeah.
So I haven't had, but I will say, across the board, a common thing for a lot of diverse authors has been the complaint of, well, we're not really sure how to market it. And to that, our response is, it's a romance novel. So how are you marketing this romance novel? And so, that should, give that a try. It's not, to me, it doesn't seem like that's a valid but argument. So I have not experienced that with, I know it's been a blessing, like my experience with Kensington. There are people who, whether it's an agent or whether it's an editor, like the feedback that they get could be stereotypical,
right?
Which is not, I'm not writing for the stereotypes, kind of thing. But for me, for the most part, I've had a good experience with, Kensington trying to get my books out, to readership and that kind of thing.
That's fabulous. I am so impressed with what you do, because my bucket list is eventually to write a book. But that's down the road because,
well,
I'm starting with a podcast, y'all. Starting with a podcast.
I'm going to say, do it.
I've started. I've got an outline.
Oh, nice.
So
what
maybe.
kind of book?
Well, it would be about sex and dating and relationships from my history and trying, being a single girl. Been single for, I turned 40 this year. I've always been single. So got to get those stories out there somewhere.
I will line up to read it.
Fabulous. I love you. Well, thank you so much for coming on. I am so excited that you were able to come on and do this with me. I think it's such a cool thing that you do for a living. I think it's amazing. So thank you again for coming on. Thanks you guys for watching. Make sure you go check out her books because they're kind of fabulous. Talk to you guys later. Bye.
Yes.